Our work has grown and developed up here, and we thank God for it. Southern Baptists are still the largest evangelical group in all of Alaska. And some of our churches are doing real well in Alaska now. We've had our ups, we've had our downs, and we've had our difficulties, but somehow or the other we've managed to hang in there and do some work for God. In the last 3 years, our baptisms have been increasing throughout the state, and our church membership in most of our churches has been growing. Of course, some of our churches have been up and down. They've had hard days and good days. One of our difficulties up here has been to keep pastors over a period of time. Alaska is not an easy place at all to live if you're looking for all the comforts of home. And sometimes pastors have a hard time staying up here, and they get discouraged and downhearted. Folks have said, well, Alaska's different, and it is different. In some ways, you're isolated, especially back in the early years of our history. We were almost totally isolated from Baptists from anywhere. I remember when I first came to Anchorage, Alaska, the only Baptist preacher around here anywhere. And then C.O. Duncan came up to Fairbanks, and that was 400 or 500 hard miles on gravel road all the way. It took you 2 days to drive from here to Anchorage. And it was a long ways, way down, 600-700 miles to Juneau, where our third church started. We were out of the mainstream of Baptist, and after a while, if you weren't careful, you'd get to be a little lonely, and you would want some fellowship with other Baptists. And it was a long trip to go to the conventions down the state. That was a long, expensive trip to get down there. And that was rather difficult sometimes to make it, until we came to the time of jet airplanes, when it shortened the trip down the states a considerable. Now, as far as living has always been fairly good up here. It's better for the preachers now than it used to be. I remember I first came up here, I didn't get any salary at all from the church. I worked for a living. And then as the church grew, I started working sort of part-time to bring in a little extra money, because my first salary that I got was $250 a month, and you just couldn't live on that. After we built our church, while we were building our church, I moved into a building that was on the back of the lot, which had been a horse stable. And it had 1 3/4 inch plank between us and the Arctic winter up here. We was heating it with a old oil space heater in there, and we didn't freeze to death, but we had no running water. We had to go over into the little house where we were having church to go to the bathroom and take a bath. We had to go over there to cook. There was a kitchen in there with an old-fashioned range fired by fuel oil. And that's where we cooked, and that's where we ate, and then we had church in there when we had church fairs. And then we slept and lived out in the shed until such time as we could get in the church building which we were building. And when we could move church over there, then we moved in the little house where the church used to be, where we did have church before we got our regular church building built. It wasn't easy. Of course, it's a rather difficult kind of living up here in Alaska, but it was an adventure. It's something to remember. You go through things like that, and then you sit here in a comfortable chair by a fireplace, a nice warm house that has all the conveniences that you'll ever need, and you can remember those things and be a lot more grateful for what you do have. The old boy said the nice thing about sitting on the tack is it feels so good when you get off. And when you have been through some of these difficulties, which my family had to go through with, in order to have some of the conveniences, in order to do the work of God, then you can appreciate what you do have. And you appreciate it a lot more than those who have always had it. And I'm quite sure that these experiences in life are wonderful things. I remember we had a man up here, old Thomas Jr. He had an airplane accident way out in the wilderness, spent several days out there, isolated until they found him and brought him in. It was in the wintertime, difficult. And he was talking about it on the TV here, and they asked him if he was afraid. He said, no, I wasn't afraid. I just looked upon it as another adventure for my life. Sometimes if in our difficulties, problems, and heartaches like we have, if we would take that attitude and just thank God for another adventure in life, it would make a lot of difference in the way we respond to the difficulties of life. I'll never forget what he said. Just another adventure in life. And life is a series of adventures. We'll make them so. Difficulties, problems can be an adventure if we look upon them. It's just another experience and another adventure that life has brought us.